Hi, everybody. I am Jen, and from the Wildlife and Heritage nonprofit Les Fruits in St. Martin, and I'm really happy to be here to talk to you guys today. It's going to start off kind of depressing, so I just want to warn you, it's going to get a lot better as I keep talking, so just kind of hang in there. So in September 2017, Hurricane Irma directly hit the island of St. Martin. So that's us, right there, right in the middle of it. And it was the strongest hurricane ever recorded in this hemisphere, and it was absolutely catastrophic. 90% of the buildings were damaged. About a third were destroyed. This is in our town. People were hurt, people died, and within about the same week, we had Jose and Maria also hit us. It's just hard to describe. This is our feeling when we heard that Jose and Maria were also coming. We're like, what? No. But it wasn't just our birds and wildlife, but people, probably a lot of us here in this room, have had an incredibly hard time since these storms, and the stress and setbacks of this long recovery, this aftermath, can feel worse than the disaster itself. Personal, social, environmental resources are destroyed, people are depressed, they're traumatized, and they're just completely exhausted. This is like the worst part, so hang in there. So when you're in this situation, how can you possibly engage people in nature and conservation? And the answer that we found on St. Martin is, even though there are these huge challenges, there are also powerful, positive opportunities. So it's turning around now. This is where it starts to turn around. So how do you leverage these opportunities to help people engage with nature? And I'm going to show you some stuff that worked on St. Martin. So because what people have just been through, they can get hyper aware of the environment. So there's no electricity, there's no TV, sometimes there's no house. So kids and adults spend a lot of time outside, and they are interacting with nature when maybe they didn't before. So people are already more aware and involved with nature, and disasters are depressing and they're stressful, but watching wildlife and engaging with nature makes you happy. It relieves stress. Local birders and some other folks knew to start feeding birds as soon as it was safe to go outside. So this helped the surviving birds get through the first days and weeks after the storm. But it also helped people get through that time. Feeding birds and watching birds gave them something really positive to focus on. This is a really strong memory and connection that people on St. Martin are still talking about. If they had a feeder, or they went to a friend's house that had a feeder. Decima Williams mentioned yesterday, birds lift us up. It's hard to really communicate how powerful that was, but it really was amazing. Same thing with the BirdsCaribbean initiative that made it possible to give away hundreds of feeders on St. Martin. So that helped birds, and it was a great opportunity to do bird education, but it also provided a positive experience for people who really needed that. And supplying materials for an ongoing positive engagement with nature, an ongoing relationship with birds at this crucial time was highly impactful. So another thing, after a disaster, lots of people are motivated to clean up the land around them. So before Irma, there was a group called Clean St. Martin. They were an informal Facebook group where if you went to the beach by yourself and cleaned some stuff up, you could take a selfie and post it on this page. And after Irma, it became a platform to organize people to do cleanups together as a group every weekend. And it used that post-hurricane motivation to activate a whole network of people to do cleanups in wild spaces. So this was really great. Another thing that happens after a disaster, schools are closed or under stress. So the opportunity here is that any educational experiences that are available to kids are incredibly meaningful. So we did educational stuff. We still held our Migratory Bird Festival that fall. It was a month late, we had to do it in tents, but we had an incredible response. Here are amazing volunteers. Because the schools weren't open and there just wasn't anything to do, people were so happy that these were activities. There was a thing that kids and families could do together, and we ended up engaging a bunch of new members and volunteers at this event. Another educational thing we did is a Museum Naturalis. That is our free, all-volunteer museum about local nature and heritage. Our pop-up was destroyed in Irma, but we mobilized volunteers to rebuild in a permanent location. And since families and schools were and are under huge financial and emotional stress, to have a free, fun place to go is really great for them. And for us, it helps us engage more kids and adults in nature and wildlife. So we're able to connect with people we hadn't reached before. We have more than doubled our membership for volunteers. I don't know whether it's like triple or quadruple, but we now have over 300 volunteers. 300 volunteers with over 5,000 hours of volunteer work just on this museum project since January of 2018. We opened the museum last July, and we've had over 6,000 visitors and more than 2,000 youth visitors. So that's a lot of people to reach. We also trained 24 local educators in the BirdsCaribbean program. So that's 4 days of free bilingual training. This built relationships with educators, so they used BirdsLoop in their classes, but then they also brought their classes and groups to the museum for even more education, and they told their colleagues. So it was kind of a domino effect. Okay, in disasters, people clearly see negative effects of deforestation and habitat destruction because their houses get flooded or there's erosion. So they see why habitat restoration is important. So help them do it. We started a native plants nursery, so to raise and give away native plants and trees for free. And this encourages replanting wild spaces and creating more bird-friendly backyards. We've been talking a lot about, over the long term after these disasters, what food is available for birds. So this helps birds and it helps people. And this native plants nursery was partly funded by a grant from BirdsCaribbean, so thank you. You made it possible. We've given away over 1,000 plants so far, including donating 300 red mangrove seedlings to a replanting project from EPIC. So, based on our own experience, here's some things that we recommend you should have set up all the time in case of disaster. Raise public awareness of feeding birds in hurricane education and in education about preparing hurricane kits or disaster kits. So ideally, not just birders, but everybody should know what to do to help birds after a disaster and be prepared to do it. So you could do that by creating press releases or shareable posters that explain what should be in your hurricane kit or your disaster checklist to help birds. So feeders, food, stuff like that. Great chance to explain how birds and their habitats help people after disasters too. You know, seed dispersal, pollinating, trees that protect us from erosion and flooding. Create native seed banks. One of the best things you can do to jumpstart habitat restoration. Turns out, after a Category 5 hurricane, and then many other hurricanes, there aren't that many seeds left, or flowers or fruits to make more seeds. So our native plants nursery could have gotten started so much faster if we had already had a native seed bank. Get set for cleanups. Clean St. Martin already had their stuff set up. So if habitat cleanups are important to you, set up a volunteer network and communication ahead of time, or partner with another organization to do it. That way, if disaster strikes, you are already set up to clean up. Set up your international fundraising. Almost all our funding was coming from local sources, so after Irma, that wasn't possible. So we lost time on getting funding beyond the island. When there's a disaster, people want to help you right away, so make sure that they can. Ask yourself, do I have a funding platform that's international? If not, set one up now. We use Global Giving. You can all contribute to the museum here, and it will give you a tax break in the US. Another thing that helps, designate someone who does not live where you live, who can then activate that funding platform or that appeal for you. That really helps if you end up in a situation where communication could be difficult for days or weeks or months. Really helps to have that person on the outside. Plan for post-disaster education. Education is extra impactful after a disaster. Make a plan for what you can provide. Could be bird sleuth games, leading walks, that kind of thing. Think through how you can do your events in a recovery situation. People need something positive, and they will remember these experiences. It's a crucial opportunity to create lasting connections with people and nature. It will help them, and it will help you. So, good luck, happy preparation, and happy recovery to you all. Thank you.